This message comes from Greenlight. Ready to start talking to your kids about financial literacy? Meet Greenlight, the debit card and money app that teaches kids and teens how to earn, save, spend wisely, and invest with your guardrails in place. With Greenlight, you can send money to kids quickly, set up chores, automate allowance, and keep an eye on your kids' spending with real-time notifications. Join millions of parents and kids building healthy financial habits together on Greenlight. Get started risk-free at greenlight.com/get started. That's GREENLIGHT.com/get started.
And then you put it in the pan for a quick sear and then boom, just delicious.
That sounds incredible, actually.
It is. It's amazing.
Ooh, my turn.
All right, here you go.
All right. I mean, the only way to kill bad ideas is exposure. Damn it, it's real.
Yeah.
Hey guys, what's the big stack of money?
I want to play with the big stack of money. Get the big stack of money.
No, we were just, Tom, stop.
Mine. That is my money.
Stop. Oh, wow.
Mine.
Okay. We were testing a theory based on this week's essay. What with Charles Bedaux, the famous explorer, business, Nazi guy, we were thinking maybe just having money turns you into a Nazi.
And it turns out it does.
It does, yeah.
Yeah. When I held the big pile of money, I just started punching myself for no reason. It was insane.
Guys, money doesn't turn you into Nazi. It's just a matter of who has the money and the consequences of privilege. Don't be silly. It's ridiculous.
Kanye?
Okay, you got me there.
Okay, I'm bringing this money to the main episode.
Hello and welcome to Citation Needed, the podcast where we choose a subject, read a single article about it on Wikipedia, and pretend we're experts. Because this is the internet, and that's how it works now. I'm Heath, and I'm joined on the trail by my fellow adventurers. We have a farmer, a carpenter, a banker, and the guy with dysentery. Noah, Cecil, Tom, and Eli.
Yeah, no, my harvest doesn't end with you having something to eat so much as really needing something to eat. But yeah.
I get to be the carpenter, just like me.
Yeah.
They long to be close to you.
As the
Cheers.
banker, I am definitely not slipping money into my pocket while you're getting snacks. So,
Tom, that's your job, right? Banker? I don't know.
Right.
I was just kind of guessing.
that's it.
Sure. That's what he does.
Banker.
Yeah.
Based on the
Bank.
opening skit, obviously.
Yeah, right. And Eli, you're just changing the format of the show, and you're not going to
I
introduce
have
yourself.
decided I don't do a joke at this part of the show.
You're just changing the format wantonly without asking or anything.
Wow.
And you're going to do a roast about it during Vulgarity for Charity? That's fine.
President of the podcast.
Cool. So, Tom.
yes.
What person, place, thing, concept, phenomenon? Also, will you tell Eli to please put in a thing next time when I put in a blank space?
I'm going to thank the patrons. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to thank the fucking patrons. Watch yourself.
Wow. We're just doing
Tom,
this
let's
right
just
now.
do the
Cool.
Let's just do the content of the show. What person, place, thing, concept, phenomenon, or event are we going to be talking about today?
Today we will be talking about Charles Bedaux.
All right. So who was Charles Bedaux?
So, do you guys remember when you learned about how the fifth richest man in America in the 1940s was a former Parisian pimp who became an international efficiency and management consultant and then later led a failed expedition across the unmapped wilderness of Canada and then hosted the marriage of the Duke and Duchess of Windsor at his chateau and then introduced them to the Nazis before being arrested in Africa when he conspired with the Germans to build a peanut oil pipeline in Algiers?
What?
What is happening?
No. Yeah, I actually can't believe how weirdly difficult this story was to research, given how big a deal this guy was and how much of an influence he had. But this story absolutely begs to be given the citation needed treatment.
Tom,
That's all real?
Tom, we live in a place where large swaths of the country can't even say that slavery was a net negative, man.
Yeah. Yeah, to be fair, learning anything in this country is weirdly difficult.
That's true.
That's an uphill battle.
All right, so Charles was born in 1886. His father, a successful engineer, and he had two brothers who would also go on to be engineers. rather than Nazi collaborators, which, by the way, is just the long way around to saying Nazi.
Yep.
Nazi, you're describing Nazi. Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually a little worse because you had to seek them out, right?
Yeah.
Now, Charles, by all accounts, was a very bright and highly energetic kid, but a very poor student. And rather than become an engineer, he dropped out of school at 16 and quickly met Rue Pedaux, a Parisian pimp.
Oh, I think the pimp is a guy named Henri Ledoux, and Rue Pedaux is the main road of the red light district in Paris at the time. So I don't know why I know that, but I think it's what I just said.
I got that mixed up. So Bedaux, already showing the first signs of his life-defining amorality, became a pimp apprentice.
What?
Huh.
Yeah. From Ledoux, Charles learned how to fight and how to dress in exchange for luring young women new to Paris into prostitution under Ledoux's control. This partnership lasted only a couple of years, however, as Bedaux was shot to death, after which Charles figured that pimping indeed wasn't easy and hoofed it to America when he was 19.
Okay, I didn't picture pimps having an apprentice system.
Yeah.
That was new to me. It was like, snatch this chalice from my hand, this absurd chalice, and then you'll be ready to blam. Okay, he got shot right there.
It would be great if a bitch had my money. No, it's not that. I have so much to learn.
All right. Say what you will, but this is a decidedly less creepy relationship than the one between Batman and Robin, in my mind.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
At first, Bedaux worked a series of menial jobs in an effort to make ends meet, including working as something with the old-timey name Sandhog,
Caliente.
which is manual labor in tunnels, before moving on to become a successful life insurance salesman.
A step down from pimp if ever there was one.
He also tried his hand at a number of get-rich-quick schemes, which involved, at least at first, rather too little of the getting rich. 2 years after moving to America, he married his practice wife, Blanche Allen, and they had a son the next year who never re-enters the picture in any of the materials that I've read. So fuck that kid.
Tom, I need you to stop trying to make the term practice wife happen. It's just not going to happen, man.
It's going to happen.
What happens for some of us anyway. So
Charles then got a job that would change not just his life, but the lives of thousands. Bedaux took a job as an interpreter for A.M. Morini, an Italian industrial engineering firm. That firm was involved in the burgeoning field of efficiency measurements, which is the business science of squeezing human beings for every ounce of labor they can produce until they collapse and can be replaced with more grist for the capitalist mill.
Jesus Christ.
Bedaux took to the idea like a pimp to exploited women.
Okay.
Oh, wow. A Nazi empowering rabid capitalist. If he calls someone helping kids a pedo, I think we're onto something here, guys.
In 1917, having returned to the U.S., Bedaux settled in Grand Rapids and shed his practice wife in favor of his wife's final form, a local Michigander named Fern Lombard. The two were married in July of that same year, and I love the story of their wedding. While driving about in Michigan, Fern and Charles had car trouble. By chance, another car pulled up and the driver got out to offer aid. Charles, seeing that the man was a minister, asked if instead of helping with the car, he could, right there on the side of the road, marry Charles and Fern. The minister agreed, and Charles and Fern were wed on the streets outside of Grand Rapids by a passing minister next to their broken down car.
Get the fuck out of here. And that minister's name? Albert Einstein.
No, it makes sense, though, Eli. Like, if you're dedicated to efficiency, you got no time for floral arrangements and all that shit. I get it.
Now, as we've already discussed, Charles was very much enamored of the field of labor measurement. And he was also very much enamored of the idea of being rich as all fuck. And so he came up with the concept of the Bedaux system of human power measurement.
Gross.
If you can read that name and be surprised that he turned out to be a Nazi, then you are the only one. But here's how this worked. Charles figured that all labor of any type could be divided up into units, which could be related to a factor of minutes. These units he called the Bedaux unit, later called the B or the Bedaux B. The idea was that the work of anything produced could be measured and divided into 60 equal units to determine how efficiently someone was working.
Hey, Charles, I think you're describing minutes. Are you saying you invented minutes of work conceptually?
Now, thus, if you were a coal miner, in 1 hour, you should produce an amount of work equal to 60 Bedaux units.
Yeah.
60? Wow.
Yeah, 60.
The conversion
60
is crazy.
Minutes.
Yeah, how do you?
Tough.
It's tough to keep track of.
You invented dividing too?
Workers would then be rated and paid based on their production of these B units. Of course, the company would determine the starting place for the numerator in this equation, and the result was that work either sped way the fuck up or labor expenses came down. Either way, companies loved it, and every worker that ever labored under this system fucking loathed it.
What's the formula for converting B units to 2-liter bottles of pee? Do you know that?
1 to 1.
I feel like Charles and the employers are forgetting the old formula that Shakespeare proposed for workers' rights. You know, to be or not to be, if you know what I'm saying.
Okay. Yes.
Terrible.
I gotta say, not many people can move on from pimp and land on something even more exploitative, right? Well done, Charles.
By 1924, Charles and Fern moved from Grand Rapids to Cleveland, and the B unit was taking off. Bedaux acted as a management consultant, selling and overseeing the implementation of this work speed-up system of labor to huge companies all across the globe. Charles Bedaux was indeed getting quite rich, and quite quickly, and Bedaux International was established. By 1934, companies in 21 countries were using the Bedaux system, including Eastman Kodak, DuPont, BP, and Campbell's.
Okay, I still don't understand how the world of industry was paying this guy for the concept of time and the division sign. What the fuck were they using before this guy? How?
It was gumption and bootstraps, Heath. Keep up.
Okay.
Now, when I say that nobody liked working under this system, what I meant to say is that they violently resisted.
That's the not to be, like I said.
That's true. At Campbell's, the introduction of the B standard became the primary driver for the majority of these shop floor battles, of which there were many. In 1929, textile workers forced to labor under this system went on strike to protest the B unit's use in their factories. Similarly, the B unit's use in the Pacific Northwest among workers in the lumber industry led to violent labor disputes, which seems particularly dangerous when the workers are wielding axes. But all of this was just noise to Charles, who had now become not just rich, but fantastically so. By the middle of the 1930s, Charles Bedaux was the 5th richest man in America.
What?
So naturally, this is a good time for him to take up Canadian wilderness exploration and Nazism.
Nazism. All right. Well, almost Nazi time is the standard cue for the Citation Needed halftime show. So we're going to take a quick break for some apropos of nothing.
You folks need a hand?
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Oh my God, I thought we would be out here all night.
Oh, it's a cold one, all right. You have a jack?
No. That's why we couldn't change the tire.
Oh, no problem. I got one. I'll get it out of the back here.
Pardon me, are you a priest?
I am. Our First Lady of the Immaculate Conception.
Well, thank you, Father. This is so helpful.
All right, here you two go. I have some hot cocoa in this thermos, so you could just warm in my car for a while I change out your tire here.
Wow. You really are prepared.
Heck, while you're at it, you can marry us, right, honey?
Well, I mean, you're not really dressed for the occasion.
Yeah, no, it was just a joke. Disregard that. She was not being serious.
Now hold on now. Miss, are you, let me guess, a size 8?
I am an 8.
Well, and what size coat do you wear, sir?
No, well, 46 long, but we're not doing that. We're not getting married. That's not.
Give me a second. Okay. Hold on a second. Hold on. Okay, I did have a gown in the back. It is an 8. I also have a 10 if it's a little snug. Closest I had to you was a 48. See if this one fits.
Oh, wow.
And, I could just tap on my horn for the music. It plays a pipe organ version of Canon in D.
Oh, the whole song?
No, she was just kidding. We didn't even discuss this. So
Yeah, you should see how mad people get when I tap at a stoplight. My goodness.
I mean, I do have our rings.
Ring? What are you talking about?
Oh, they're just family heirlooms. I keep them on for my special occasions.
Special occasions? Like getting married on the side of the road? What is happening right now?
I also have a golden retriever in the back of the car here. You can use that as your ring bearer.
Oh my God, that's amazing. I want a golden retriever as a ring bearer.
Yeah, all right, that's cute. But we haven't even talked about this father thing.
All right, now all we need is to set up a reception.
You know, funny enough, do you all like steam table lasagna?
Okay, I do. And we're back. When we left off, the guy who invented horsepower for humans was about to check out Germany in the 1930s. It's going to be great. What's next, Tom? He puts the B in the Zyklon? What's going on?
So I have to set this scene for you. It's now 1934. Charles has managed to make himself wealthy off the backs of the everyday worker the world over, like all industrialists. But the money isn't really the primary motivator for Bedaux. What Charles wanted, what he really craved, was recognition of his genius. He wanted to stake a claim on history itself, and like many of the era, he wanted to prove up his man cred by doing white man exploration stuff. He spent a month crossing Libya and explored and hunted his way about British Columbia a bit in 1926 and 1932. Trouble was, nobody really cared. I mean, it was the early 1930s, and the world was somewhat preoccupied with the simmering tensions threatening war in Europe, and so they paid little attention to the eccentric management consultants' camping trips. Charles would need something grander to get the world's attention, and to do that, he would have to attempt to do something never before done.
Invent length and width and depth for the very first time?
Heath, you gotta let this go, buddy. You gotta let this go.
No, why did nobody bring this up? You can't invent time.
Well, you know what else nobody had ever done? Traversed across 1,500 miles of Canadian wilderness from Edmonton, Alberta, up and over the Canadian Rockies, all the way to the Pacific Ocean in British Columbia. And not only had no one done it, but definitely nobody had driven this route, which mostly has no roads or trails. It has very big, steep mountains in the middle there. So naturally, Charles Bedaux announced that he would make this dangerous, improbable trek across Canada in the newly designed and tested Citroën half-track. It's basically a little car-tank hybrid thing. This voyage would be officially called the Bedaux Subarctic Citroën Expedition, though nobody really called it that. Citroëns had recently been used to traverse the Sahara and Gobi deserts, as well as the Himalayas, voyages which were racistly dubbed the Black and Yellow Cruises, respectively.
Yikes.
Bedaux's Citroën-based expedition was frequently then referred to as the White Cruise.
Yeah, nowadays those are called Disney cruises, but I digress.
Except that's also not what it was called. What it was actually usually called was the Champagne Safari. And in fact, there is a documentary which I could not for the life of me get my hands on in time for this essay of the same name. More on that in a moment. I want to explore the motivations for this voyage across the Rockies before we continue this story. Because if you're scratching your head and wondering why anyone would try to drive across the Canadian wilds, you wouldn't be alone. Ostensibly, the stated goal was to test the possibility of using the Citroën half-tracks in mechanized polar exploration. And Bedaux was familiar with, and he knew Citroën, so it did have the potential of being a great spot of publicity for him. Still, Charles was footing the entire cost of the enterprise, except for the Citroëns themselves, and there seemed to be very little payoff even if the expedition was successful other than publicity. Except that, and pin in this as well, it might have actually been something of a failed Nazi spy mission to establish a land route across Canada, which would be useful somehow for Nazi reasons.
Yeah, useful, because then they could just stop in Calgary and blow their horn all night You know, just a convoy or something.
It would make a lot of sense for a Nazi movement through Canada to stall out in Alberta, though. Yes, that makes sense.
So Bedaux sent an 8-man team ahead to try to hack down trees and what have you, sufficient to create some kind of path for the expedition. And Charles, efficiency expert, prepared for a carefully thought out, essentials only trek across the wilderness. Just kidding. What he did instead was invite along his wife and his mistress.
What?
About 50 cowboys along with their pack horses, a personal valet, a maid in waiting for his wife, but notably not for his side piece, and of course a film crew, including Floyd Crosby, who had just won an Academy Award for some old movie that I had never heard of.
Okay, wait. He brought his wife and his mistress? Something tells me this expedition's going to go just as wrong as Tom's other essays where everyone ends up eating each other.
All right, so a weird cinephile side note. The movie Floyd Crosby won an Oscar for was called Taboo, A Story of the South Seas, and it's exactly the kind of racist tripe that you would expect a burgeoning Nazis cinematographer to make. Also, David Crosby's dad of Crosby, Stills, and Nashville.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is a fun fact.
Now, despite his adventuring about in Africa and Tibet prior, Bedaux was not a man too interested in abandoning the creature comforts just because he happened to be attempting to cross a nice chunk of America's hat without any experience or roads. Naturally, he very efficiently brought along the usual tents and stoves and, gasoline for the half tracks. But he also brought with him a small handful of comfort items, such as crates of fragile china and crystal stemware, French novels for the women to read to alleviate boredom, silk pajamas, of course, a whole fucking bathtub and porcelain toilets with their own tents to surround them.
What though? Huh?
They, of course, also needed to eat as well, so they brought along the usual camping food fare, such as caviar, Devonshire cream, truffles, and just crates and crates of champagne.
Okay, everybody makes s'mores their own way, Tom. There's a lot of ways to do it.
A lot of real judgy here.
Add cocaine. It's a really good s'mores party. I'm just saying.
So it was that on July the 22nd, 1934, the intrepid and pointless and perhaps fascist team attended the traditional expeditionary send-off champagne breakfast thrown by the Board of Trade, and they set off. Bedaux started the journey, first riding in a limousine, which he soon abandoned for its wild impracticality once out of sight of the well-wishers. Things did not get much better from there. Within 24 hours of setting off, they began to get a taste of just how stupid this whole enterprise really was. 1934 was one of the rainiest years in the area on record, and the ground soon turned into a gooey, impassable sludge. Now, this wasn't mud. This was kind of a wet, churned clay called muskeg, and the Citroen half-tracks were just absolutely no match for it. The machines kept getting stuck and had to be pretty much constantly winched up hills, or they just broke down, or they were in constant need of cleaning out the gluey muskeg, grinding them to an inexorable halt. By August, they were averaging about 3 miles a day.
Hey, boss, they have a dedicated word for difficult mud that we're going through right now. It seems like a whole thing. I don't know. Maybe we just help do the Holocaust. It could be easier.
Jesus Christ.
Now, by expedition standards, things weren't going well. And Bedaux had, as you'll recall, invited a whole film crew to document this thing. And he didn't want to look like an asshole swatting mosquitoes in the mud while they moved forward inches at a time. Instead, Bedaux and Crosby asked the cowboys to act out like little dramas and plays for the amusement of the ladies, and to give the cameras something to film other than tedium. To keep those in the real world entertained, Bedaux started making up thrilling little missives that they radioed back to the world with wild exaggerations that would make Eli proud.
Hey.
One such embellishment was the bold "man lost in raging rapids," which actually referred to a horse which had drowned.
Okay, I'm still stuck on him turning his cowboys into an improv troupe. Right? Well, see, Clem, aren't you glad we took those classes at the pit? How's this going to help us be cowboys, you said? Well, boy, is your face red, Clem. Yes, I am, motherfucker.
Well, okay, but unless he expected to come across like herds of unruly mountain cattle. I don't know what the hell else he planned to do with them.
The Citrons were not working, but Bedaux couldn't just abandon them and move on. Instead, he set up 2 of them at the top of a nearby cliff, and he had them pushed over the edge so they could film them falling to the ground below. Another they put on a raft and floated down a river, and they had rigged up part of a nearby bluff with TNT so that when the raft bumped into the river bend, the TNT would explode and the bluff would collapse atop the half track to great cinematic effect. Instead, the Citron merely floated gently downriver, past the explosives-laden bluff, and out of view.
Okay, please tell me the Nazi guy went over and checked the dynamite like Wile E. Coyote and
stood right on the X. Yeah.
Now, that Citron was later found and recovered by a rancher who would then drive it regularly on his property for the next 30 years.
That's awesome.
Ironically, the Citron floated peacefully past the explosives right into Michael's Bay. Right there. Just Michael Bay.
They still had horses, however, and so they thought they could still salvage success from the grip of failure. But of course, they did not.
It would not be a Tom essay if they did. Now would it?
It would not.
Right.
Instead, the horses came down with hoof rot, a contagious and terrible disease, which once it infects a pack of horses pretty much spells doom for them all. The expedition was reduced
rub
then.
Their hooves together a lot? Like
I don't know how it spreads. I don't know.
Patty cake.
I feel like they walk in each other's shit quite a bit.
That's probably it.
Probably that real one.
The expedition was reduced then to shooting horses at a rate as high as 3 horses a day, which then attracted wolves. Bedaux was forced to abandon the whole thing hundreds of miles from his intended destination. The footage of this whole mess was lost to posterity until 1986, when it was found and turned into a documentary. Charles Bedaux, of course, declared the entire thing a rousing success and turned his full-time attention to becoming a better Nazi. So Bedaux had purchased a chateau in France called the Chateau de Conde, which was a ridiculously opulent castle-looking thing that he renovated to make even more opulent. And that ridiculous expense paid off for Bedaux when in 1937 he hosted the wedding of the Duke and Duchess of Windsor at his estate. And of course, Charles got to talking, as you do, and naturally suggested that perhaps after the nuptials, the Duke and Duchess would like Charles to arrange for them a nice tour of Nazi Germany. You see, by this time, Bedaux, ever the opportunist, had cozied up to the Nazi regime, believing that they were more likely than not to seize and keep control of Europe. And for their part, the Duke and Duchess were thrilled with their little Nazi vacation getaway, during which they toured factories and mines governed by the Bedaux B system. And then the Duke capped off the trip with a speech praising the Nazis, followed by a wholesome Nazi salute.
Okay, yeah, that's terrible. Even if you take away the Nazi part, though, who the fuck goes on a factory tour for a honeymoon? That's insane.
Okay, wow, Noah, you do not have to take that, okay?
No, it's fine, Eli. Heath's inability to appreciate a good tri-belt system is punishment enough in itself.
Say what you will about the tenets of National Socialism. Just think of good tri-belts.
In 1940, after the fall of France to Germany, Bedaux was made an economic advisor to the Vichy regime and the Reich, which suited Bedaux fine since he had made some refinements he wanted to try out on his B system. By this time, the B unit had evolved from a simple unit of measurement for labor to, at least in Charles's mind, the potential to replace currency itself.
Oh, it's like Bitcoin.
This is so dumb.
Wow.
This is insane. Bedaux called the idea, quote, capitalism within communism, end quote. And his idea was that everyone would receive a basic income ration in the form of Bs. This UBI would be just enough to survive, but little more. And from there, each person in the society would then work to produce labor capital, which would be measured in, of course, more Bs. And from that stockpile of surplus Bs, they would purchase whatever they desired that their B unit UBI didn't cover. Now, if that sounds like nonsense to you, it is because it is, but that did not prevent the Nazis from basically gifting Charles Bedaux the entire town of Roquefort to try out his stupid B system. They just gave him a town to play with. It failed because that's fucking stupid, and eventually the Nazis told him to cut the shit out and he wasn't gifted any more French towns for his dumb experiments. All right, so the Nazis, obviously fucking stupid, and despite his failure in Roquefort, Charles was assigned by the Germans to a sabotage branch of the Abwehr. The largest oil refinery feeding the Allies was a refinery in Iran at Abadan. The Nazis figured that if they blew that refinery to bits, it would choke the oil supply and cripple the Allies. And it probably would have. But instead of bombing the refinery, Bedaux convinced the Nazis that they should seize the refinery and then fill all the pipes with liquid sand.
What?
The liquid sand in the pipes would act to protect the refinery from counter-sabotage. And then once the war was over, the Nazis would have this sweet oil refinery all to themselves. It was, however, something of a problem that there was no such thing as liquid sand.
Okay. Didn't think I'd heard of that.
Minor detail. And a large delay was created while Nazi engineers tried to figure out what the hell that could even mean.
Oh, hey, you know what? We could get some muskeg to put in there, but it's actually a real pain in the ass to go there. But that stuff just clogs everything.
Yeah, in fact, the delay here was so long that the Nazis lost the moment, and the whole plan was scrapped so they could concentrate on losing to the Russians.
He's just at his office. All right, note to self, only hinge plans on things that exist. Got it. It's a new rule for me.
Now, this last part of the story is a bizarre and fitting end to this tale of incompetence, greed, and self-aggrandizement. In 1942, Bedaux had lost some of his footing with the Nazis, and even in German-controlled France, there were violent labor strikes when his stupid Bedaux B system was implemented. So it was that he made his way then to Algiers with the hope of constructing a pipeline from the Mediterranean to West Africa carrying peanut oil. Now,
that's real. I've heard of peanut oil. That's a real thing.
Now, the Wikipedia is a little kinder to Bedaux than literally anything else that I read, because the wiki purports that the pipeline's aim was to benefit the Allied powers. But it was not. In fact, it so wasn't that U.S. officials arrested Bedaux in Algiers for treason, since he was being actively treasonous at the time.
Okay, so wait. They can arrest you for treason just because you're being actively treasonous? Because I feel like somebody should tell Merrick Garland about that. Is he a listener? Do we know?
Charles Bedaux, former pimp turned explorer, turned industrialist millionaire, turned Nazi, was flown from Africa to Miami on charges of trading with the enemy and treason. Rather than face the music, Charles Bedaux killed himself with an overdose of barbiturates that he had accumulated by secreting away his nightly dose until he had enough to kill himself.
Nice.
This story was almost impossibly difficult to find good sources on. And I had to read a crazy number of articles to get all these details, which struck me as odd given how big a deal he was at the time, until I read an article which surmised that it wasn't the details of this crazy story which allowed its telling to rest beneath the radar of popular culture, but rather it was that since neither America nor France was particularly proud to count him among their ranks, that his story remains largely forgotten.
Okay. And if you had to summarize what you've learned in one sentence, what would it be?
The B unit is basically Bitcoin. That's Bitcoin. B Bitcoin.
All right. Are you ready for the quiz?
Let's do it.
All right, Tom, there's a lot of lessons to be learned from your essay, but what's my personal takeaway? A.
A few moments later.
D? Let's just get it over with quickly.
Oh, no, it was secret answer E. Read the entire question over again so it's harder for Cecil to edit out. All right, Tom.
No, it's not.
All right, I've got one for you that'll make the final cut. What did Charles Bedaux famously quip to his friends right after his wedding to Fern? A, now we're coefficient. B, I'm taking this Bedaux to bed. Oh. Was it C?
Dice clay.
Yeah. Is it C? She really puts the thighs in Nazi sympathizer. Or D, tonight she gets the real B unit.
Nothing beats now we're coefficient. That's
excellent.
God
They're
damn
all
it.
really good.
I put all these other ones in. I thought I would distract you, but no, that is
They're all
correct.
really
It is
good.
A.
Tom, what was the song on B Unit's mixtape when he tried to cross Canada?
I'm calling him B.
Fuck the mounted police. B. Straight out of Swampton. C. Past the Reich. Or D. Into Shrub.
Oh, those are all
Bottle full
good.
of bub.
Oh, those are all good. It's got to be fuck the mounted police.
Yes, absolutely. It was.
Yay.
I don't know how Eli
Nicely
wins this. He didn't have a
done.
question. How could Eli win? He
I
didn't have a
win
question.
because my question was read and
It's so
appeared on
weird.
the podcast. Noah,
Eli wins because he didn't appear and lose, so therefore he
my
wins.
thing was there. Noah, my thing was there. Next week, Noah, you will be the essayist. Noah.
All right. Well, for Tom, Noah, Cecil, I'm Heath. Thank you for hanging out with us today. Wow. We'll be back next week. And by then, Noah will be an expert on something else.
I'm thanking
Between
the
now and then, you
patrons
can hear
underneath
Tom
your
and Cecil
outro.
on Cognitive Dissonance.
Hey,
and you can
patrons.
hear Noah and myself
Thank
on
you
God
so
Awful
much for
Movies,
your
The
help.
Scathing Atheist,
Your
Skeptocrat, and D&D minus.
Patreon.com.
And if you'd like a blue check mark, you can make a per episode donation at patreon.com/citation. Any
We'll give you
fucking
a
color
blue
you
check
want.
mark.
I will give you any
Whatever
check mark you want.
Literally doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
Sure.
Giving them away.
And if you'd like to get in touch with us, listen to past episodes, connect with us on social media, or take a look at the show notes, check out citationpod.com.
Did you know that parents rank financial literacy as the #1 most difficult life skill to teach? Meet Greenlight, the debit card and money app for families. With Greenlight, you can send money to kids quickly, set up chores, automate allowance, and keep an eye on your kids' spending with real-time notifications. Kids learn to earn, save, and spend wisely. And parents can rest easy knowing their kids are learning about money with guardrails in place. Try Greenlight risk-free today at greenlight.com/getstarted. That's GREENLIGHT.com/getstarted.